As a Scrum Master, I was relieved when they removed the three questions from the Scrum Guide. I've seen too many teams suffer from the unintended consequences of the questions. Today, we'll piece together 5 reasons these questions can destroy team focus. Our first reason that questions can create a distraction is that they distract us from the sprint goal. If you were to quiz your average Scrum practitioner about what the 3 daily questions are, you'd likely get the following response: what has been accomplished since the last meeting? What will be done before the next meeting? What obstacles are in the way? Do these look correct to you? The problem with these questions is that they don't focus on the actual goal of the daily Scrum. The Scrum Guide says the development team uses the daily Scrum to inspect progress toward the sprint goal and to inspect how progress is trending toward completing the work in the sprint backlog. What happens with open-ended questions like those above is that we end up talking about many things that don't directly relate to the sprint goal or the sprint backlog. If any straight A students are in the room right now, you're likely itching to correct me, so I'll let you have your moment. The 3 Scrum questions referenced above differ from those in the Scrum Guide before their 2020 removal. Here's what the 2017 Scrum Guide said. What did I do yesterday that helped the development team meet the sprint goal? What will I do today to help the development team meet the sprint goal? Do I see any impediment that prevents me or the development team from meeting the sprint goal? So why did that first set of questions seem so familiar to everyone? This false memory isn't an example of the Mandela effect. I copied the first set of questions from the October 2011 Scrum Guide. The abbreviated version of the questions was the only format from Scrum's origin around circa 1994 to 2001. Any books written, people trained, courses created, or certifications granted in that time frame would have referenced the original version of the questions. So why should this matter? Regardless of the Scrum Guide's current content, many of us ask an unfocused version of the 3 questions in our daily Scrums. We're missing an opportunity to focus on what we've decided matters most. Every daily Scrum, the team talks about all of the work we're accomplishing, yet we often manage to make it to the end of the sprint without completing the sprint goal. Using the incomplete version of the questions can misdirect our focus. Another reason to beware of the 3 questions is that they tend to trigger a defensive response. What has been accomplished since the last meeting sounds an awful lot like, what did we pay you for all day yesterday? This dysfunction is typically rooted in cultural issues such as lack of trust, but teams that have yet to reach agile maturity are often struggling through those exact cultural issues. In an environment plagued with command and control leadership, these questions can take on a negative connotation that tends to strangle any desire for collaboration and fosters self-promotion. Suddenly, the responses are tailored to justify one's job rather than help the team plan for the next 24 hours. You've probably met one of those annoying people that always one-up anyone's story. Whatever size fish you reeled in, they caught one larger. If you've ever felt like smacking a braggart, consider smacking the like button instead. It helps this video reach more people so that they too can learn tactics to prevent violence against braggarts. Seriously though, the daily Scrum can quickly devolve into a competition for the largest fish, determined by who can rattle off the most completed tasks. Not only is this demotivational to the person who goes first, who miraculously always seems to end up with the shorter list, but it's mostly a waste of time to the team as it provides no value. The 3 question format also has the potential to distract your team from planning for the next 24 hours. The Scrum Guide says the developers can select whatever structure and techniques they want, as long as their daily Scrum focuses on progress toward the sprint goal and produces an actionable plan for the next day of work. We tend to overlook that actionable plan requirement. As each individual answers these questions, your team might be collaborating to develop this plan through additional discussion, but the 3 question format itself isn't naturally creating this plan. For example, let's say Fred is unexpectedly out for a few days. Ron, Harry, Hermione, and George should discuss anything Fred has in progress and determine if they can or should push the work forward or if it makes more sense to wait until Fred returns. However, if the team is overly reliant on the questions, this discussion never happens. More often than not, since Fred is absent, his work doesn't get discussed at all. Since he's not there to answer the questions, It's almost as if he doesn't exist. When we let the questions distract us from the plan, one of two things will happen. Either the team will need to spend more time outside of the daily scrum to stay in sync, or we'll near the end of the sprint and suddenly realize we don't have time to complete a product backlog item because we deferred a dependency too long. Hermione waited until the last minute to develop the widget for Ron, and now Ron doesn't have time to finish the next bit of work before the end of the sprint. Ron spent the first half of the sprint working on some other components, figuring he'd have plenty of time to finish his last PBI when Hermione completed her work. He never reported an impediment because technically he had stuff to work on. If instead the team had focused on the sprint goal and what impediments we had to accomplishing the goal, the team would likely have noticed the dependency quicker. The primary reason to be wary of the 3 questions is that they're a very slippery slope, leading straight down to a status meeting. The number one complaint I hear from teams regarding the daily scrum is that it's really just a status meeting with a cute name. The second most common complaint is that it's a micromanagement meeting. Both of these complaints stem from a dysfunction that harkens back to traditional project management, where we used to sit in a room, review the Gantt chart, and ask people to answer for late tasks. The daily scrum is intended to be something very different, but the 3 questions sometimes serve as a gateway drug that leads us straight back to command and controlville. Once the daily scrum devolves into a status meeting instead of a planning meeting, it's tough to break people out of that mindset without shaking up the format, just like it's challenging to stay out of the ruts in a well-worn road. My next reason to be wary of the daily scrum questions is that they reduce the team's ability to self-manage. One of the benefits of Scrum is that it's a framework that allows teams to fill in the implementation that works best for them. We've already covered 4 other potential negative consequences of depending on these questions. Why enforce or even heavily suggest that this is the format that all teams need to use? It's too prescriptive. Removing the questions in the 2020 Scrum Guide update was the right move. I'd rather leave it up to my teams to select a format that works best for them and helps them accomplish the goals of the daily stand-up. If they stick with the 3 questions because they find them helpful, so be it. All knowledge is built one piece at a time. If you'd like another piece, watch this video on the pitfalls of asynchronous daily scrums. I'll see you over there. Cheers.